This is not a series about games you haven't heard of. This is a series about games everyone has heard of. Games that everyone has an opinion on, regardless of whether they've played them or not. Games whose actual qualities have been buried in a narrative, whether good or bad. Games that everyone always makes the exact same comments about. Games that are in desperate need of a second opinion. I asked for requests, and for my sins, y'all gave me one. Hi, I'm Dr. I. Coleman. I have a PhD in interactive trips to hell, and I give second opinions to games where everyone thinks the case has already been closed. But when Carbonic Pikmin on YouTube suggested that I do a video talking about why Sonic Unleashed was good, well, even I balked. I mean, that was the game that had this nonsense. But sometimes doing a show like this means confronting your own biases, so I went to my local library, picked up a copy of the game, and here we go. I almost can't believe we're doing this, but it's time to give Sonic Unleashed a second opinion. It's no secret that modern Sonic games, well, they're not good, are they? 2D platforming and 3D platforming are wildly different from each other, and require a very different approach. That's why Super Mario 3D World feels like it has very little in common with New Super Mario Bros. U, even though they're both good games. Sonic is especially difficult to translate, because fast-paced loop-de-loop runner gameplay is awesome in 2D, but nauseating in 3D. Plus, here it's easy to see what's coming up and how to anticipate it without stopping the flow of gameplay. Here, you can't do that so much. It also doesn't help that Team Sonic just can't leave well enough alone. They could have been churning out guaranteed moneymakers by following the same classic formula for years. Again, the example of Mario comes to mind. Alternately, they could have just focused on translating the Sonic experience to 3D and then sticking with that. But they always gotta add in weird stuff, don't they? Stuff like this. Or this. Or this. A lot of people consider Sonic Unleashed the turning point for the franchise. Sure, there have been bad games in the series before, even games that are pretty much universally agreed to be worse. But the fact that Sega would follow up a string of disappointing releases with a game where Sonic turns into a werehog? That was it. It was over. Those previous failures hadn't been flukes. This was Sonic now, and it seemed like there would never be a proper 3D entry into the franchise. And yes, fans, I'll get this out of the way, yes, Sonic Generations was pretty good, although it had more flaws than its fans cared to admit, and it was mostly just good because of the sections that brought back the 2D stuff, not because it was any sort of revelation in 3D space. Also, Colors was overrated, Lost World was crap, and the Sonic Boom games are extra crap with a side of crap slaw. The TV show's good, though. Anyway, the point is that there's already a good 3D Sonic game, or at least the blueprint for how a good one should be made. Now, don't get me wrong, calling Sonic Unleashed flawed is an exercise in understatement. The werehog was stupid. The concept is stupid, it looks stupid, the name is stupid because technically it should be Hedgewolf, and the parts of the game where you have to play as the thing are what holds the whole experience back. See, half the game takes place at night, as the werehog, and there are these horrible action platforming sections. Unleashed came out at a time where every video game wanted to be God of War, and there were a lot of wannabe clones that didn't work, but none worked less than this game. Not only is the combat incredibly slow and plodding, which is exactly what you don't want a Sonic game to be, but it wasn't even competently executed. Why does jumping between columns take 2 button presses? Why are there frame rate issues in these sections that don't exist anywhere else? If you were playing on Xbox, the controls were famously buggy, and if you were playing on Wii, as I did for this video, the game was a stark reminder of why gimmicky motion controls should all burn in hell forever. I completely understand why the game got the reception it did. As a games reviewer myself, if I got a game that was half broken, I wouldn't be able to give it a positive score no matter how good the other half was. But reviews are based around evaluating the merit of a game as a product, Now that that's no longer an issue, we can see Sonic Unleashed for what it really is. The game that all other 3D Sonic games should have taken inspiration from. Because yes, the werehog stuff was half the game, but the other half of the game wasn't just good, it was the best this series has been since Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and I genuinely mean that. I mean, look at this. This isn't some professional speedrun or something, this is just the first level of the game. It's fast, it's exciting, and it feels like Sonic. And while it looks like it would take some kind of incredible skill to pull it off, it's actually really intuitive. Why? Well, there's no easy answer, it's just really good, really smart level design. Notice how, unlike a lot of other 3D Sonic games, it doesn't really put obstacles in your path. There's things you have to react to, sure, and you're given plenty of time to react to them, but there's nothing in your way that's going to hit you and bring the game to a screeching halt. Because while that might have worked in 2D, it's a lot harder to anticipate and deal with those things in 3D, especially when backing up to try again requires a complete camera rotation. And speaking of 2D, Sonic Unleashed doesn't feel nearly as ashamed of its past as, say, Shadow the Hedgehog does. It knows that some things work better in 2D, so long stretches of these daylight sections will switch perspective for more traditional gameplay. But then it switches back to do things in 3D that the old games couldn't do, like this spinning wheel stuff, or things that are made better by a sense of spatial presence. This falling section probably could have been done in 2D, or at least something similar, but how much cooler is it to feel like you're actually falling? And the movement between perspectives is so seamless that when I was playing, I genuinely didn't think of it as 2D sections and 3D sections. I just thought about what a good time I was having. It's exciting! It feels like there's surprises around every corner, and it speaks to an understanding of platformers and of the Sonic franchise that, frankly, we don't see from Sonic Team anymore. Even Sonic Generations thought that the best way to combine 2D and 3D gameplay was to sequester them in completely different levels, which served only to show how much better base Sonic gameplay with no innovation is in 2 dimensions. Back to those changes in perspective. At this point, here, where you swivel around and see the city, I'm pretty sure my jaw literally dropped. And that's because of something else Sonic Unleashed does really well: atmosphere. Yes, I know how ridiculous it sounds to make that comment about a Sonic game, but I still stand by it. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 is often held up correctly as a quintessential example of bad world building. It doesn't make sense for these cartoony animal characters to exist in a world with realistic human beings, especially one that might be fantasy or it might be modern day. Even at the time when the graphics were slightly less dated looking than they are now, it was jarring and ugly because it wasn't consistent. Unleashed's graphics, on the other hand, still look great. Barring some visual artifacting and cutscenes, they actually thought about how to make a cohesive Sonic world, designing something that fit the cartoony style of the characters, instead of trying to force those cartoon characters to exist in a realistic and gritty environment. Look, I know most of us don't like the ideas of humans existing at all in the Sonic universe, but if they're going to exist, this is the best way to do it. Say what you will about Team Sonic and Sega and all the stupid decisions they made regarding this game, but I refuse to hear a bad word said about the art team. In fact, the lead character designer for Sonic Unleashed, Shinkichi Tanahashi, even said that he thought the final design of the werehog looked, in his words, silly. Here's his original designs for the beast. You can see that it wasn't even originally going to be wolf-based. It was just meant to be a beefier, more combat-focused version of the character. They even came up with this weird Yeti version of Sonic. Now, to you, these designs might still seem a little ridiculous or have too much of that 90s edginess, but for my money, these all have a lot more character and feel like they fit in the Sonic universe a lot more than the stupid garbage design they actually used. Now, I don't know what exactly happened between this and this, but it's clear that there were talented people with really good ideas working on this project, and that those ideas weren't always allowed to shine. Back to the good stuff, though. Another reason that I actually like and care about the world where Sonic Unleashed takes place is because I actually care about the story of Sonic Unleashed. Again, I know that some people don't like the idea of the games having story or cutscenes at all, but if they're going to tell a more interesting narrative, this is the way to do it. I mean, just look at this opening cutscene. Don't tell me that a very clearly Star Wars-inspired shot of Dr. Robotnik's space fleet isn't, on some level, kinda awesome. And let's look at this one moment in particular. Did you see why that moment was so effective? Hang on, I'll play it again. It's because Sonic doesn't talk! He He doesn't talk! When we think about cutscenes in Sonic games, we think about these long, drawn-out affairs with overwrought dialogue about the fate of the universe and, it's world-building by text dump. This? You could know nothing about the series and understand this. Robotnik is evil, he's dangerous, and he builds these huge elaborate armies, but Sonic tears through them like they're nothing. It sets up what the game's about and who the major players are, and gives you something really visually interesting to watch. When you watch Sonic 06's opening cutscene, all you're thinking is, I wish this cutscene would end. When you watch Sonic Unleashed's opening cutscene, you're thinking, holy crap, that's awesome! I want to be that guy! I want to run around destroying robots at Mach speed. And you get to do so. Sure, there's some BS shortly after, but you know what? It actually kinda works from a storytelling perspective. Because Sonic's goals in the story actually align with the player's goals in the game. You want to be this guy, this butt-kicking hero who saves the day. You don't want to be this guy. And that sets up the adventure you're going to go on. You want to turn Sonic back to the person you wanted to play in the opening cutscene. Now, I think there's probably ways to bring Sonic down that were less ridiculous in introducing a werehog. And I certainly think that they shouldn't have tacked on the lousy gameplay associated with the character, but in general concept, this actually could have worked. You see, the game's writers understood something that's very, very important, which is that everything about Sonic the Hedgehog is stupid. He's a neon blue bobblehead that looks nothing like his supposed species, and he runs at 3,000 miles an hour, canonically. His best friend is named Miles per Hour, and his arch nemesis is a goofy red-headed egg. He's best when he's a chili dog scarfing parody of himself, not when he's spouting off some faux Shakespearean dialogue to a bargain bin Final Fantasy character. Sonic Unleashed gets this, which is why it doesn't take itself too seriously, scrapping most of the stupidly complex mythological stuff in favor of things like this, your first interaction with a character you've been trying to rescue for half of the game.
How dare they call this culinary concoction food? Look here, do you see this sorry excuse for a sandwich? The bread should be no less than 3/4 of an inch thick. Upon it, 1 tablespoon of mayonnaise and a pinch of black pepper. The contents, fresh cucumber, sliced thinly, if you please. Am I quite right, Tails?
That scene is a genuine delight. And it means that later on, when the game does take a gentle turn for the darker, it's a million times more effective than any of the edginess in Shadow the Hedgehog. To be fair, that game also made me laugh, but more in a laugh at sort of situation. Sonic Unleashed also pares down its core cast a lot, something that the series desperately needed to do. Your returning cast is Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Eggman, and the only other 2 characters of any real importance are Chip, who I find basically inoffensive and who gets a lot better as the game goes on, and Professor Pickle, who, in case you couldn't tell, I genuinely unironically adore. Because there's a smaller cast of characters, and the more annoying series staples are gone, the game can have more of those funny, low-key character moments, and it makes for a story that is genuinely engaging and interesting, even if it does center around quite possibly the worst premise any game has ever had. I understand why Sonic Unleashed got the hate it did. Like I said, before I got the request to do this video, I would have been right there bashing it with everyone else. And yet, I can't help but feel a certain amount of sadness that the game's legacy will always be that of a failure. Because it did so poorly and was so universally loathed, Sonic Team continued their pattern of reinventing the wheel with every release, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. And there was no need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel was right there. Sonic Unleashed is, and I say this with all sincerity, the greatest 3D Sonic has ever been. Its gameplay was fast, fluid, and exciting, grounded in the series' roots, but with a strong understanding of how adding a third dimension could augment that classic gameplay and make it even better. The graphics and music still hold up today, and created a fantastic sense of atmosphere, which was helped by a character-driven story that sure, may not be winning any Pulitzers anytime soon, but was the perfect mix of adventure and silliness that made the Sonic franchise so popular in the first place. Someone at Sega knew what they were doing with this game, and it's nothing short of criminal that their work had to share the same disc with some guy's weird furry OC. Well, there you have it. I hope that was to your satisfaction, Carbonic Pikmin. Thank you for suggesting something that was a little bit out there, a little out of my wheelhouse, something that I definitely wouldn't have gone back to if it hadn't been for your request. Maybe some of our other viewers have similarly interesting requests, and if you do, you could leave it in the comments. Just a thought. However, I do want to make one thing clear. Just because I've covered one bad Sonic game does not mean let me put it this way. I will never do a positive video about Sonic 06, the game technically called Sonic the Hedgehog. You all know what I'm talking about. It is one of the most miserable, broken, buggy games I have ever played, and there's no defending that. That game deserves all the hate it gets, and more. And that's my professional opinion. Seriously, don't ask me to do Sonic 2006. Thanks for watching this episode of Second Opinion. If you have a game you think needs a second opinion, be sure to let me know in the comments, and there's a good chance your idea will be covered on the show, just like Carbonic Pikmin's was. New episodes go up every Friday night. If you want to see more work from me and the rest of the talented Hey Poor Player team, be sure to subscribe, follow us on Twitter, or check out HeyPoorPlayer.com, where I do lots of reviews. If you know someone you think would like the show, please tweet about it, or share it on Facebook, or just spread the word. Every extra view proves the show is viable and ensures that I can make more episodes. Until then, stay professional, stay opinionated.